What is up, Dynasty Leaders? Welcome back into the final video of my one quarterback first round rookie profile series. I've run through all of my picks so far from the 101 through the 111. So if you've missed any of those videos, I invite you guys to go back and check those ones out because today's final video is on my 112, my 12th overall player, dipping back into this fantastic wide receiver pool. And it's going to be my wide receiver 7, Ole Miss wide receiver Elijah Moore. So let's get into it. Elijah Moore is currently sitting as the 2.03 and one quarterback rookie mock ADP from DLF, and he's taken anywhere from the 111 all the way down to the 210 in rookie drafts. And you can see, as I mentioned in the previous video or two, that this is basically the part in your rookie drafts where it's kind of a free-for-all. Everybody has all of their preferences in how these wide receivers stack up, and compared to the running backs, the tight ends, you throw the quarterbacks in there as well too. And it's really a major free-for-all, especially in one quarterback leagues after the first 8 or 9 players. And so that's why you see these massive ranges in mock ADP. And that is why Elijah Moore, I think, is a solid value if you can get him down, even later outside of the first round in the early, mid, potentially even late second round. But we'll get into all of that and explain why Elijah Moore is my wide receiver 7, my 12th overall player in this class, not really counting quarterbacks. But we can get right into his collegiate stats here. Freshman season 2018, 36 receptions, 398 yards, and 2 touchdowns. It was not a lot going on, but it was a very solid showing overall when you apply the context to this 2018 season, because he was playing as the wide receiver 3 behind AJ Brown and DK Metcalf, two guys that you might have heard of. Dawson Knox, the tight end, was also there. So overall, 36, 398, and 2 is a pretty solid showing whenever you think about AJ Brown commanding a lion's share amount of the targets, DK Metcalf there as well too. Dawson Knox, there was a lot of mouths to feed, a lot of future NFL stars to feed on this team. And so Elijah Moore's small little part of the pie that he pieced out and cut out for himself is actually pretty solid overall for his freshman year at 18 years old. Sophomore year, though, this is really where he starts to break out and produce as an elite talent. 67 receptions, 850 yards, and 6 touchdowns. He was basically the only wide receiver on this 2019 Ole Miss team. In fact, no other player had more than 20 total receptions on this team. And that might not seem like an elite producing season statistically, 67 for 850 and 6. But when you apply context, 850 yards receiving was actually out of only 2,300 total passing yards, and his 6 receiving touchdowns were out of a total 11 total passing yards. So you can see that he was commanding a lion's share of the market share of passing yards and passing touchdowns. And so this was really a totally underproducing offense, but Elijah Moore was the lone bright pearl in this offense that you really like to see from a 19-year-old sophomore wide receiver. And then finally, his junior 2020 season, 86 receptions, 1,193 yards, and 8 receiving touchdowns in 8 games played due to COVID. He had the second most receiving yards in college football behind Devonta Smith. Again, the only wide receiver on this Ole Miss team. No other wide receiver had more than 30 receptions on this team. Elijah Moore had 86, a huge, gigantic market share of receptions and yards and touchdowns. And I remind you that this was only out of 8 games, 86 for almost 1,208 in 8 games, which would be a 13-game college season pace of 140 receptions, 1,940 yards, and 13 touchdowns. That would be an absolutely ridiculous production line for Elijah Moore. 140 for almost 2,000 yards and 13. He was a Biletnikoff award-winning finalist. Unfortunately, lost out to Devonta Smith in that 2020 season. But overall, you can see that this was just major elite statistical production, that what you didn't see his sophomore year, even though his sophomore year that he did have a huge lion's share of the receptions, the yards, and the touchdowns for the team, the team overall was very underproducing statistically. That changed in 2020, and he had still that same amount of line share of receptions, yards, and touchdowns, but the offense was producing, the offense was clicking, and he showcased that in his statistical line. 86 for 1,208 in 8 games is absolutely insane for Elijah Moore. So you can look at him analytically, very similar to a lot of the other wide receivers that I've already talked about and run through in this series. A 19-year-old, 20% and 30% breakout age from that sophomore season. To me, I believe that he is a projected early 3rd round pick. I could see him very easily sliding into the 2nd round, just like Tylan Wallace or a few handful of the other wide receivers in this class. I have seen mock drafts where he is a late 1st round pick. I think that would really surprise me if he ended up being a 1st rounder. I see him more as a mid to late 2nd or very early 3rd round pick because he is a very elite wide receiver. And so with his 19-year-old 30% breakout age, combine it with a 3rd round pick, that would give him a 43% hit rate, 50% hit rate if he's a 2nd round pick, and a bump up to a 63% hit rate if he does somehow go in the 1st round. Although, like I said, I don't expect him to be. He does have a best yards per team pass attempt of 4.46 yards per team pass attempt, which was from that 2020 junior season. Not only is that number the best in this class, but it's also the 8th best single season yards per team pass attempt since 2005, which is absolutely insane. 4.46, if you think about it, they only had to get that number, roughly 250 to 300 pass attempts. And Elijah Moore is out here with 1,200 total yards on those low volume pass attempts in 8 games. Absolutely insane production. One of his knocks, at least analytically and from a lot of other people that I've seen, is that he is a bit undersized. He's 5'9", 185. That 185 is actually a very nice number to see from a 5'9" frame, because that showcases that at least he has some build, some structure to him, where some other guys, are kind of taller and lankier. He at least is, while shorter, is a lot more compact. And so that at least I like to see. He also projects as basically a 100% slot rate wide receiver. I do think that he can play on the outside, but I think that he's much more of a slot wide receiver. That's where he wins in college football. That's where I think he'll win in the NFL. He's a fantastic route runner as well. There's a PFF stat on Twitter from PFF College that says that Elijah Moore had a step or more of separation on 90% of his targets that season, which was the highest in the Power 5 conferences. So absolutely insane route runner in terms of separation. That's really one of the things that you see whenever you see draft profiles of him. One of the key points is just how good of a route runner and creating space and separation he is in college football. Analytically, at least looking at Ole Miss wide receivers, you have guys like A.J. Brown, DK Metcalf, even all the way back to Dante Moncrief and Mike Wallace coming out of Ole Miss. Analytically, he is somewhere between A.J. Brown and Dante Moncrief from just past Ole Miss wide receivers, which if that doesn't give you an ultimate ceiling, an ultimate floor for a wide receiver, I don't really know what will. Although his analytical profile is a lot closer to A.J. Brown than Dante Moncrief in terms of breakout age, yards per team pass attempt, and also draft capital, in my opinion, though that will remain to be seen. I've also seen comps on him anywhere from Stephon Diggs to Percy Harvin, even most recently to Deontay Johnson as well. So he's a very fantastic elite route running separator wide receiver who can be fantastic with the ball in his hands, yards after the catch kind of a guy. And he just needs to be put onto a fantastic landing spot to really maximize that output for him and utilize his strengths. And I think I've selected a few of those teams where you can come in with immediate opportunity for targets and also immediate rookie productions. So I've covered in previous videos, especially for wide receivers, because this is the 7th wide receiver in this series. There are a lot of teams that I think a wide receiver going to would be very fantastic. I feel like I've run down almost half of the NFL in terms of teams that could be fun for a wide receiver to go from this class. And, you think about teams like the Eagles, the Bengals, the Saints, Packers, Chargers. These all have different reasons and different areas that would make sense for a wide receiver to go to, you know, just in terms of sheer volume off the rip, good offenses, good head coaching and schemes to really maximize their output. So there are a lot of really fun teams that Elijah Moore could go to. I think I've picked a couple teams that would be really, really fun to see him in. The first one is the Tennessee Titans. They pick at the 221, the 53rd overall. I have mentioned the Titans in previous videos as well, but I think it would be really fun for Elijah Moore to go to Tennessee, regroup with A.J. Brown, be in a Ryan Tannehill play action system, be the primary wide receiver too, since they lost Corey Davis in free agency. They've also lost Jonnu Smith. So they're very hurting for wide receivers and just playmakers from the passing game in general. So I think Elijah Moore to the Tennessee Titans in that mid-second round would be a very fantastic landing spot for both team and player. Another team picking right behind them is the Indianapolis Colts at 222, 54th overall. Another situation where the offense is pretty solid. They don't really have as many playmakers in the wide receiver group. As of right now, they have Michael Pittman. Paris Campbell could be coming back from injury as well. There's talks about them re-signing T.Y. Hilton, but as of right now, at least in terms of recording this video, that hasn't happened yet. And so I think if you can give Carson Wentz weapons behind that offensive line for him to just sit back and be able to pick apart defenses and throw to, I think Elijah Moore would really make sense as a slot wide receiver in that offense to provide explosiveness and dynamicism in that offense across from Michael Pittman. So finally, the last team, which would just be really, really fun. I don't know ultimately if fantasy people would really, really like it, but from a sheer fun standpoint, I think it would be really cool to see Elijah Moore to the Kansas City Chiefs at the end of the second round. Andy Reid offense, you know, I've talked about him with Rondale Moore, just being able to utilize and maximize players' strengths in his offense, get super creative with getting the ball to any of his playmakers, and Pat Mahomes obviously being the best quarterback in this class, getting the ball to Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce. If you can add a third prominent weapon to that team, that's not Sammy Watkins, that's not Mecole Hardman, that's not Demarcus Robinson, just a pure slot guy, I think that would be fantastic for both the Chiefs and Elijah Moore, and it would just be really fun in general. Probably a little bit overpowered that the Chiefs already are right now, but I think it could be really, really fun, and I think Elijah Moore to the Kansas City Chiefs would just be an overall pretty solid landing spot. So that is going to do it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching and tuning in. If you've watched all 12 of these videos, thank you so much for tuning in and staying with me from my 101 through the 112. I'm going to be dropping another video as well, running through most of the second round, just players and highlights that I really, really like, players that I'm fading, where I think some of these guys could ultimately end up in your second rounds. And so I'm going to drop that one, and then another one additionally talking purely about these quarterbacks. We have 5 quarterbacks that we can really dive into, from Trevor Lawrence all the way down to Mac Jones. And I think that would just be really fun to dive into each one of those guys individually in one video, just quick hitters, and talk about them, especially in a super flex format for your rookie drafts, and then compare them to where I think you can also draft them in super flex, just in terms of where they should go with Najee Harris, Travis Etienne, Jamar Chase, Devonta Smith. Compare that with ADP and run through everything for super flex to help you guys out as well. I'd also like to mention that the DLF Dynasty Draft Guide is also out right now. If you become a DLF Premium member, you can download that guide. It's a 140-page PDF. You can download it for 100% free with a DLF Premium membership, on top of all the added benefits of being a DLF subscriber, including rankings, tools, ADP, daily articles, and rookie content, and strategy and theory, all that fantastic stuff with that 140-page guide. So go check that out. Subscribe to the YouTube channel for more of this content. Subscribe, like, rate, and review. Do all that fun stuff, and we will catch you guys later.